Kettle Springs has a great factory that makes Babe Pen corn syrup, and the taste comes straight from the cornfield. Quinn Maybrook and friends are partying when an evil presence approaches them. It's that clown in a cornfield, which was written and directed by Eli Craig, who did Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, a movie that I need to revisit at some point because it was a whole lot of fun. And if you like Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, well, see how you feel about Clown in a Cornfield. It was also written by Carter Blanchard, no relation to Tully and Joe, I don't think. Hopefully no relation to Tessa, but then again, it would have to be related to the other two. Nevertheless, it's a deep cut for wrestling fans. He did Independence Day Resurgence. That wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, so this was based on a novel by Adam Cesare. I didn't even know there was a novel called Clown in a Cornfield, but when I saw the title Clown in a Cornfield, and I saw the trailer for Clown in a Cornfield, I said, I'm going to sit down and watch this, because it's titled Clown in a Cornfield. It's either going to be really, really shitty with a title like that, or it's going to have the perfect understanding and balance to understand the assignment and have a great gooey amount of 80s cheese, blood, and entertainment and everything, and Clown in a Cornfield has the latter. Thankfully, this is hugely entertaining. People say this kind of reminds them of Thanksgiving. Well, here's the difference. See, this doesn't involve Eli Roth, so Clown in the Cornfield was actually really, really good, while Thanksgiving had a really good opening. It had some good moments, but Eli Roth is a very overrated as fuck horror director, in my opinion. Eli Roth fanboys, all 5 of you, come in the comments. So, you have Katie Douglas, who has been in some stuff. You could check out IMDb. She plays Quinn Maybrook, and then her father, Dr. Maybrook, Aaron Abrams, no relation to Herb. A lot of deep cut for wrestling fans here. They arrive at Kettle Springs, a Midwestern town that is dealing with the aftermath of a fire at their Babe Pen corn syrup factory that has kind of shared the town, shall we say. This kind of reminds me of a few towns in eastern Washington, or just a few in general. There's actually one called Coopville that this kind of reminds me of, except Coopville is far less depressing than this. Then again, it is the Midwest. No disrespect to the Midwest. I've just heard there are some great areas, and then there are some places that are depressing. They arrive. Let's just say Quinn doesn't exactly ingratiate herself all that well. She does end up meeting some people. She meets a guy named Rust at one point who kind of gives some exposition. She meets some other people, and then things develop, and we do get Clown in a Cornfield at one point. So that's good. We get a Clown in a Cornfield, so it lives up to the title. Why is there a Clown in a Cornfield? Well, because there was a mascot called Friendo, and you don't fuck with Friendo. So if you fuck with Friendo, Friendo's going to fuck with you. If you're his friend, then you're okay. If not, you're dead. So, Vincent Miller is also in this as Rust. Kevin Durand. He was in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and you've seen him in a lot of stuff. He was the one that kind of looks like Musk, except Kevin Durand actually looks human, and wasn't part of, a string of, family members that took place in, or took part in what. But the whole point, he was, what a wonderful day. Will Sasso plays the sheriff. Yes, that Will Sasso, the same guy that competed against Bret Hart on a WCW program. That actually happened, folks. That actually happened. Cassandra Potenza plays Janet. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty, except she's white and very blonde. I do want to shout Verity Marks, who plays Ronnie. I thought she did good. I saw her in one or two other, semi-horror related projects, and I think she has a bright future. So yeah, basically there's your premise right there. It's fun, it's ooey, it's gooey, it captures the spirit perfectly. I'm going to throw this away right now, but it captures everything perfectly as far as the spirit of it. It's not perfect. Once it gets to the end, it starts to limp with its narrative and its explanation and everything, and there are lines that hit, but you can tell they're starting to stretch it a little bit. But when it leans into the bullshit and the kills, the opening's perfect. It sets the tone right. There's a kill that cuts right to the goddamn credits. I'm not going to tell you what kind of kill, but it's perfect. It's not as iconic as Evil Dead Rise, with the girl in the water and the title rising above the horizon. I need to watch Evil Dead Rise again after talking about this. But we then see Quinn. She is not fitting in all that well. But she does. It's really, really accelerated, though, how she doesn't fit in at first, but then does. And there's this group of, amateur filmmakers, which factors into Shadow Force that I reviewed earlier. Depending on which order you're watching these in, by the way. I actually watched this before Shadow Force. And thank God I watched this before. Because I might have actually ran screaming into the streets if I watched Shadow Force first. So nevertheless, Clown in a Cornfield is well worth your time. It is a Shudder original, by the way, so it'll probably get released on streaming maybe by the end of this month, maybe by early June. I decided to sit down and watch it because fortunately it was playing early enough and close enough to my area. And I like people to leave my area alone generally, but I don't mind when horror invades my area. But what I like is that everybody has enough of an understanding what their characters are. They don't overplay it. I mean, there's a little overplaying a little bit later on, where it does remind me a little bit of Thanksgiving. I started to get a little bit irritated because I thought the third act of that was a little bit messy. But what I like about this is people say, oh, it's like Founders Day, and they even mention Founders Day, like, when the town was founded. Founders Day I was too kind to originally because I did rewatch enough of that, and Founders Day was not good. That was the first movie I saw in 2024. That was the first movie I saw. Yeah. If you've ever seen Founders Day, you know why that's not a good thing. Clown in Cornfield, though, I like the Friendo costume. That's nice. That's some good stuff. There are a few things I'm leaving out because I'm going to talk about them in the spoilers, but it's well worth checking out. If you don't get a chance to see it in theaters, well, I'll probably get like a 2-3 week run. It'll be on Shudder within the next 6 to 8 weeks. That being said, good acting by the cast. Well directed, well paced, well written, and hilarious and goopy. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. It turns out there's multiple Friendos. Because it's not ghostly, it's not demonic. You see that shirt back there? It is basically the founding people that are doing this. Why are they doing this? Because they don't like outsiders. There were some hobos that showed up that did some killing. They decided to do all this kind of stuff. It was insane. Now, I'm going to talk about a few things that led up to this, but I just want to start with the main thing, because sometimes people just want to get to the main spoiler and then jump off and, watch the movie if they want to know everything. And I'm trying to do that more if possible. But the thing is, that's what it's revealed, and it's revealed to all the town people are in on it. And that's why, we see multiple people in the Friendo costumes. Now, at first, they do actually kind of tip their hand early that that's what it's about. Rust and Cole used to actually be friends. Cole's a guy that is in this filmmaking group that Quinn seems to like. The dad doesn't necessarily trust him. Kind of good reason, because they're doing a lot of underage drinking at some points. And the reason they moved there is that mother died of an overdose. The dad is a doctor, but couldn't really practice in the city anymore. Had to move elsewhere, do fixing up work, and find himself and, do doctoring in the city. Like a Hallmark movie, except the violence is not taking place in my head. Because that's how I feel every time I watch the Hallmark movies. I just want to commit very, very, very bad things. Let's move on from that before I incriminate anybody, including myself. Essentially, we get these friends that ingratiate themselves with Quinn early on. This is after Rust provides some exposition. He says, watch out for some people that, hang out in this town and live in this town. Will Sasso feels that these kids are bad news, and that's because they're all blamed for the fire that burned down the factory. It actually turns out they had nothing to do with the fire at the factory, but it is what it is. Cole also mentions that he lost his sister, so they're both dealing with loss, him and Quinn. But the thing is Rust and Cole used to be friends. And the word friends is really emphasized. I think you know where I'm going here. And the doctor, the dad is sort of there. He doesn't really get to do much doctoring until like one thing a little bit later on. But he's, trying to be a good dad and everything. I don't really know how to like say, put like a bunch of like detail into this outside of talking about the kills. Because since I mentioned all the stuff that happened, like, the town folks doing this and why they were doing this, we do get Tucker. He's the African-American kid. He ends up getting killed actually third, because in the beginning of the movie, There's a blonde that gets killed in 1991, and then there's somebody that gets, the guy gets gut shot with, I believe, a chainsaw. Well, no, he doesn't get gut shot. He gets gut shot with a sharp object, because the chainsaw's a little bit earlier. And they cut right to the title. Like, they just show the title, and I'm like, oh, it's a scythe. I'm like, that's perfect. Perfect. The way they did that was perfect editing. Eli Craig showing that he understands this shit. That Tucker and Dale versus Evil wasn't just a one-time thing. So, Quinn sees the filmmaking that they do, gets prank played on her at one point with this film, and then it turns out, sees something in the background. It's not just somebody it wasn't just somebody playing Tucker, of course, one of the characters, Tucker. Get it. But sees that somebody's in that Friendo costume. Will Sasso's trying to tell her, hey, stay away from those kids. We'll go to town here. This kind of stuff. The mayor, played by Kevin Durand. He's playing a perfect creepy mayor and everything. Again, much better than they tried to do in Founders Day, where they just could not find the right tone. And I remember trying to give that movie a chance. And I think I originally gave it a C plus or whatever it was, and I should have given it an F because I ended up giving it a 1.5 on Letterboxd when I tried rewatching it. By the way, my Letterboxd description will be below, or at least the handle so you can look for it. Thank you guys very much. So the thing is, Kevin Durand's trying to run this thing. They're doing this parade, doing all this stuff. And this, meanwhile, is after Tucker got killed. He got killed by somebody slashing his throat, but they put plastic down. Further proving it's not a demon, it's not a supernatural entity, it's very much a person. A person doing this. Why is a person doing this? Is it somebody that lost their job at the factory? Well, no, I just talked about why. And, because I thought that might have actually been almost even better, because then you could have tried to figure out who actually lost their job at the factory. But then, I sort of see why they went this route. And then there was a big old beefy guy that was lifting and everything. I forgot his name right now, but he was lifting, and then there's this Jack in the Box, this little Friendo Jack in the Box. It, plays, and once it pops out, that's an indication that the kills are going to happen. It's like the music box from The Conjuring, which I actually was in the process of rewatching earlier today, because I love that movie. But it was like that, and then it's almost like an indication, almost like a beacon, like the sun, scare him, and then boom, and then he's lifting the barbell, and then Friendo, whoever it was, put a saw there and sawed his head off. Now that was creative. So everybody's banding together after this parade thing goes south. They get jailed. Then, they get eventually released. Doctor's upset. All this stuff's going on. She sneaks out to go to this party and is going with these people. And Rust is carrying like a deer, talking about how he liked to hunt earlier when he talked to Quinn, and is talking to Cole. And Cole and her driving. They run into Rust. A little bit of talk. And it's becoming more and more obvious what kind of friends we were referring to here. So they're partying. They're having some fun. She starts making out with Cole, and basically he lets it slip that him and Rust weren't friends. They were gay. But Cole can't admit that about himself. He's confused. You can't come out until you're ready. That's the thing. You can't come out however you swing. Both ways, one way, it doesn't matter. You can't come out until you're ready. And it wasn't playing it like in a mean-spirited way, so it wasn't playing it for laughs, so I'll give him credit for that. But that basically gets forgotten about, at least for a little bit, because suddenly Friendo shows up and arrows somebody, from the field, and she's dead. But it's not a prank. And Janet and Ronnie think it is. And then an arrow goes through a guy's head, so he's dead. And they got a guy's head, one of the boyfriends of the girls. And then suddenly, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's all the townsfolk. Now that was a pretty cool visual, I'll give them that. So they start invading, people are getting killed, but because they're human, they're not demons, not undead, they're slipping a lot. And they get into this shed, they're about to get killed, and then Rust is like, hey, this guy's, let's set up some explosives. They set up some explosives. They get through this shit tunnel. And he sets us up to explode. We don't know what happens to Rust till later on. But that ends up happening. Meanwhile, during this fracas, before that, he had shot one of the guy's hands off, which necessitates, at one point, Dr. Maybrook driving around looking for his daughter, goes into this broken, into pharmacy and finds one of the friendos with the guy that had the guy's hand shut off. Oh, you're the doctor. You're going to fix him or your daughter's going to die, because they have walkie-talkies or communicating, all that stuff. And then there was a funny point where they're getting stalked in the cornfield. The kids are. See, we got clowns, and we got clowns in the cornfield, not just clowns in the cornfield. So it's probably good that they just called it clown in the cornfield, so they didn't tip us off on that. But clowns in the cornfield just would have made it seem like just we were getting like the circus thing. Clowns are funny. No clowns on fire, oddly enough, in this. But what we end up seeing is the doctor kind of, outsmarts this guy at one point and gets a saline bag, gets this, walkie-talkie, this kind of stuff. He's trying, does little things. And then at one point, he kind of knocks the little thing off, like, oh, he's flatlining. Get this, help. Get these shock paddles. And he gets the shock paddles, puts the knife down, and the doctor stabs him in the neck. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. He's like, I don't know if he's trying to channel Majora's Mask, but he's like, oh, I wouldn't take that out. And he starts bleeding. And that was a funny line. That was a genuinely funny line. That was good. But there is a point where Verity Marks' Ronnie is running in the field, and it's a great shot, but just boom, with the chainsaw just right up in the gut. It's just great shot, good shit. That was exactly what this movie needed to be. And then we end up getting Janet gets stabbed with a pitchfork in a house at one point, and she gets it pulled out of her because Quinn has to stab the person coming towards her. And she's like, I hate you, Quinn. Even though, Janet was fucked. But then the guy who stabbed, that's in the Friendo mask. Me too. I don't know why that's... This movie's stupid fun. It's fun. That's the thing. It's fun. Most importantly, it's fun. So, it comes down to, it's the town folks are doing that. The dad ends up driving into this building. Cole's hanging, by the way, because his dad is upset that, A, he let his sister die. I guess either during the babysitting thing or during the fire. I don't exactly know. Whatever. They kind of went over a whole lot of stuff. Will Sasso was doing it just because, why not? The fry cook, the people there, the local people. And Cole's going to hang also in part because he's gay, I guess. I don't know if that was ever necessarily, said directly. The dad drives in, and basically, this sets off some wheels in motion, ironically, where, various town folks end up, getting, one gets impaled. I think the fry cook got impaled. One got their head, slammed by a steel beam that was in this factory. It's hilarious. And the mayor ends up escaping at this point. Just take it off. Now, this is also while Will Sasso is fighting with Quinn. The sheriff ends up getting shocked in the mouth. That's not a euphemism. And Cole ends up getting saved because Rust ends up shooting down. He comes back, shoots down the noose that he was hanging from. And and they end up kissing because it's like they're meant to be together. Or at least they're meant to be each other's first love. Who knows? Not judging here. Don't marry the first person you love. Well, maybe you could. Let's not talk about my dating advice, since I've been in one long-term relationship my whole life. So the whole deal is this is where, when they started explaining, you people do this, or, these homeless people came in and murdered people, and we had to kill them, and we do this founder stuff where we kill people that aren't from around here, because we're all inbred, or what, I guess. It got a little messy. I think it was supposed to be played for laughs. It got a little messy. But what ends up happening is the mayor is gone. And then there's this side gag of where the Quinn got a car from her dad, but he was going to surprise her, but he had to get her out of jail. And, it's a stick shift, and they were going to learn together. Then she couldn't learn how to operate a stick shift. It led to her getting captured. And then she figured out how to use a stick shift to like run a clown friendo over and wipe the blood off with the windshield wipers. There was also this really funny line from Verity Marks, I think was like the highlight of the goddamn thing. Talking about people getting decapitated, whatever. We're all going to be headless teenagers without heads. I don't know why that line is sticking in my head. If that's put on a shirt by an artist at Redbubble, I am dead serious. I will buy that. I don't know why that line is so good, but it just is. But yeah, then a little bit later, the Dr. Maybrook's running for Mayor Brooke, as it were. She's going out to college. Quinn and Rust are together. They say their goodbyes. She finds a music box, a little jack-in-the-box thing in her car, throws it out, and then it pops open, and then it just goes to credits. And that's it. That is Clown in a Cornfield. It is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. A+. Agree, disagree, what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.